Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military, veterans, and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. I'm your host, Daniel Faust. As we go over and enter the superhero battle room, which is all these buttons and more, virtually speaking, we go over and bring a veteran or a first responder or one of our patriot heroes to go over and to tell their story. So in our battle deck, we have Stephen O'Donnell. He is a man who served in the EOD world, which is helping others explode their message out to the masses. He's going to go share his story and how he can help to get your message out to the masses. So we're going to bring him on forward. Hey, Stephen, do I have you?
You got me. Thanks for having me on War Heroes to Superheroes this evening. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, glad the internet's working too, because it took us a bit to launch. So
Exactly.
All right, so we're not going to go give up and we're going to go dive in. So we're going to bring into our first question into the room is what inspired you to join the military many moons ago?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, just had the in the last couple of years, just had the 30th anniversary of when I left for Marine Corps boot camp right out of high school. Joined the military because it seemed like the best way to get out of town. Really wasn't as a student, really didn't apply myself in high school, and this seemed like the best way to get away from, in that running phase, to get away from what I was dealing with as a teenager. We know everything, so arguments with the parents, not applying myself in school, and so I opted to go to the military. Marine Corps recruiter who I still talk to this day, great friend of mine. He got me hook, line, and sinker. By the end of that year, though, there were, out of a graduating class of 140, a small graduating class, there were 10 of us that had signed up for the Marine Corps. So it was awesome.
Man, just sounds like my home right now with 4 teenagers going over and arguing my life. So you went in because of dad and mom issues. So I'm wondering how many children are going to go in the military in my household. So I guess we'll see. That's cool. So 30 years ago, you went over and signed up. So
it was longer ago than that. I was in a delayed entry program for actually like a year and a half.
Okay, so a little over 30.
Almost at the beginning of junior year is when I signed up. Convinced my mother that she was the one that had to be convinced. Dad was like, when can we kick him out the door? Mom, didn't want her oldest son out the door that quick. So it was just funny how I said, please do this with me, or I'll do it myself when I turn 18. So and I left for Marine Corps boot camp 7 days after I turned 18 in September of 1991. So did 4 years active duty in the Marine Corps, and then did a year of active reserve where I was working at the unit for a reserve unit. So
going from there, is that the only service that you did, or I think I remember correctly, you came back into service for a second round, right?
Oh yeah. I've had a break-in service for about 3 years, and under the contractual agreements, at least back then, you kind of owed your time for 8 years. Depending on whether you did 4 to 6 years on active, the rest of it you could be called back up. I'm not so sure how it is these days because obviously I've been detached from it for very long. They won't re-enlist me as a cantankerous man. So after the Marine Corps, went to college, didn't we got a lag here. After the Marine Corps, I went to college, played too much rugby, wasted that time away, joined the Army in August of 1999, left went to Fort Jackson, didn't have to do boot camp again, just got like 12 days of paperwork and uniforms, and then they shipped me off to EOD school, Explosive Ordinance Disposal, down at Eglin Air Force Base, where all 4 branches of the service that have candidates to become bomb squad technicians send their troops, so their soldiers or their affiliates.
So how many years did you do from then after you went to EOD school then?
So when I finally left the service, it was a total of almost 15 years combined between the Marine Corps and the Army. I finished EOD school in February of 2001, and then 8 months later we had 9/11. So that kind of set the stage for my career in EOD. We went to my unit was out of Fort Benning at the time, which has been renamed, but we went to Baghdad in September of 2003 on a deployment, combat deployment. We came back in April of 2004. That was an election year, so we were busy assisting Secret Service clearing venues for VIPs, and then and I was working on my team leader certification at the time to actually run an EOD team in combat. And then in May of 2005, we left for Afghanistan, arrived in Afghanistan, and then came back in November of 2005.
So after 15
yeah, we're getting
years,
some lagging. Sorry about that, bud.
Yeah, we are. So after 15 years, what was the backstory for becoming a veteran? Was it you just got out of the service, or was it medically related? Just curious on how you became a veteran.
Well, so I was kind of back then. I kind of put myself in a position. I was suffering from my PTSD, making stupid choices. I had an alcohol related incident, which was later the charges were dropped on the civil side. But choices were made and I was not happy. I felt that I was being mishandled by my command. So basically I took the option out. I had earned 3 Army accommodation medals in 3 years and chose to leave the service and received an honorable discharge. And then from that point forward, I got into contracting. One, to obviously, I had a fiance at the time. One, to provide for the family that we looked to grow together with, and then also to kind of get my fix, because I've been to combat twice, and it's kind of for me, and specifically, it was it's kind of like a fix, an itch that can never be scratched. It's the area that I felt most comfortable in. I kept running back to combat every time I'd come home and something would go wrong back here stateside, which was, as I know now, all part of the the PTSD and just how it was kind of disassociate. It was tearing me apart and making me disassociate myself from real life over here in the States. So. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I said that is huge to go over and to realize that you were disassociating from the real world and trying to jump into other worlds that weren't existent anymore. So
it took me until recent. Sorry to interrupt. It took me until recently to understand that within the last 2.5, 3 years, based on on June 4th, 2021. I pulled my PTSD got so bad, I pulled the trigger on a cell phone call instead of the trigger on a gun, and then started my journey into healing through the VA, therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and then doing everything I can to share my story and then also help other veterans so that they don't when they get to that point, or hopefully help them before they get to that point. But if they get to that point, they don't end it all. So
it sounds like for a while your transition out of the military was very, very difficult. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I would say that it was it's me. I have to take ownership of my own actions, but it was me. It was the mix of the PTSD, the mix of the booze, making dumb decisions, getting into arguments in relationships, ending relationships. As I mentioned before, when I felt like I was running away from my hometown to get into the military and go see the world, I was also in a point where over a decade or so that I was running away from the problems here in civilian life that I didn't understand, couldn't comprehend, couldn't process. And then I would run off and go back to combat and find myself in a position where, everything was calm in my head. And it's ironic in that sense, because it's the most chaotic environment in the world, combat. And here I am feeling like I can take a breath and I'm all right, so to speak.
Yeah, that sounds like a twisty, twirly world that you dealt with for a long time. So you figured out to go over and push the trigger on the cell phone instead of pushing the trigger onto a gun.
Yeah.
So was that the moment that you pivoted to serve our current community, or was that a little longer? And why did you go over and start serving our veteran community?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's actually, I think, a combination of both. I was technically using my skill sets working for government contracting companies when I wasn't overseas, here stateside, sharing knowledge, teaching curriculum, writing curriculum, helping the next generations in that 20-year war that we were in get prepared before they go overseas for deployment. Various corporations that I worked for, various positions that I worked for, all within the background of explosive ordnance disposal. Homemade explosives instructor, post blast investigation instructor, tactics instructor. I did a bunch of stuff. I have a nuke background from the Army EOD community. So that's when I got back in 08 from a contract overseas, I got pulled into AT Solutions, and I was on their nuke chem bio team, part of a 6 weeks road to war for EOD teams getting ready to deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, getting combat zones. So that part of it was it was self-service in the sense of, it earns me a paycheck, but I felt as though I was filling that void to be a part of it by sharing my knowledge and teaching and sharing the knowledge with these kids and getting these kids prepared. Going forth from that, I have my moment in June 2021 through therapy. I spent time reconnecting with my faith, and then after that is kind of when I started doing. I've been doing 22 push-ups a day and bringing awareness to the suicide rates in not only the veteran community, but also the first responder community. And so I've been doing it for 820 days was today. I'll keep doing it until my shoulders can't bear it anymore. And then I've started with a Leo, a law enforcement professional friend of mine, retired. He and I started Diffusing 22, which is a page on Facebook to bring awareness, provide help, inspirational quotes throughout the day. I started a coffee business, which I help support the EOD community, or the EOD Warrior Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps the EOD community. So we sponsor them, but it is a for-profit organization. My coffee company, Master Blaster Coffee. I'm looking for and other ways to help the community, because there are so many of us out there that possibly don't know which way to turn. They haven't. Sometimes I feel they haven't met the person that they would feel comfortable just talking with, and it doesn't have to be clinical. A lot of people are pushing clinical in the sense of, well, let's get you the help that you need on the clinical side. Well, a lot of people aren't ready for that. So, I in groups that I belong to in social media, I throw out my number there, private groups. So that way, if somebody needs to talk over the weekend, I'm there. And then I just recently was able to, or pulled in to the KGRA digital broadcasting family. My partner in Diffusing 22, Todd Nunley, who is retired ATF, he has a Leo first responder show with that digital broadcasting company. And his producer said, a veteran that would hold the show? So they picked me, or I got Todd threw me in front of the bus. And then I kind of misunderstood the conversation between Todd and myself. And when I talked to Bill, the producer, Bill's like, I thought I was just going to be a guest on a show like I am today with you. I didn't realize he was going to give me my own show. So we've had 3 episodes, had Brian, Sergeant Big Country Conwell on the show yesterday. Really just trying to get into the veteran community to share stories from different veterans, and maybe we connect with that one person and it helps in some way, in some capacity with what they're dealing with.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sometimes we go throw ourselves into transformation and we make that active choice, and sometimes we get thrown into it so we can go over and help. So kind of like your EOD world, you got thrown into the digital explosives of multimedia now.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be exploding your message to the masses, as I talked about earlier. So that's really cool. Really cool. I mean, I've only been gifted once a show in that particular regard. And it was kind of a whirlwind for me too. It was like the disability channel at the time, and got thrown that. And I kind of got overwhelmed. So I'm glad you're doing better than I was. It took me a lot of kinks to go over and to learn that. So that is really awesome. So with that, into one of our last questions before we go into our overall is, you've dealt with a lot of things because of pressure in tough times, either through explosives, you unarming, or even the explosives of almost unaliving yourself and hitting the phone. What was your secret fuel when that pressure in tough times came?
I'd have to say that some of it, a percentage of it is, being a Marine. We're just kind of a different breed. And I've been asked, you're a Marine, you're Army EOD. And it's in my head, it's not conflicting. They're 2 separate entities. EOD is the best job I've ever had. Being a Marine is a family that I've been a part of ever since I was 18, and will be a part of from this point, for the rest of my life. So, and also the EOD community as well. I don't want to say that they're not open armed and that we don't embrace each other in that community, but, Army EOD is what got me in the community, and I love where I'm at in the community. The coffee company got me back to being able to find it within the strength within myself to go to the memorial every weekend and see the names on the wall of the people that I know that have passed away in the last 20 years in combat related injuries. It's gotten me, in the last 3 years, the coffee company has gotten me to where I am in support of the community. And I'm ultimately just trying to, I know what I felt the moment that I decided to make the phone call instead of use the gun. And I want to make sure that I'm there for other veterans so that they don't have to make that decision and they choose the gun, and then they leave everybody dismayed in their wake. So the secret fuel would be, I'm a stubborn man. I'm an Irishman. And I have rekindled and regained my faith. And I rely on both of those and about 2 pots of coffee a day.
So an Irish faith man that goes over and chugs coffee is the secret fuel for the pressure and tough times to come, to go over and to keep going.
Sounds good. Let's run with it.
There we go. Might be a tagline one day. All right. Last and certainly not least, 3 superhero tactics. So I either want you to visit yourself when you were that 18-year-old about to enter the Marines, or maybe someone that you go over and mentor. What 3 tactics would you go over and give them so they can thrive and not just survive?
Stay connected to your family, whoever you call family. I know it's not as easy these days as calling it, the bloodline is not necessarily always the family that you identify with and the family that you can go to. But whoever you call a family in your life, stay close to them. They will be there for you. If you don't believe in something higher than yourself, I would suggest maybe exploring that. Booze is not the answer. Drugs is not the answer. There's a whole list of other things that are out there that are detrimental to us, core in us as individuals that are not the answer either. And then I'd have to say, try to stay physically fit. I have noticed since I've turned 50 last September that I'm starting to have medical problems because I've let myself go a little bit. It's amazing how all that time that I thought I was immortal in my younger years in the military kind of caught up with me like a Mack truck. Right, after I turned 50, and I saw some of the signs leading up to this prior to turning 50, but now I'm in the responsive mode instead of being in the proactive mode. So stay fit, and for me, it's not a lot, but it is, it's over 22 push-ups a day, and I've been doing it for 820 days. So it's at least one thing a day that I accomplish, and it's a stepping stone moving forward every day.
That's really good. So basically, get your faith grounded, get your body grounded, get your mind grounded. The great superhero tactics with that. So last and certainly not least, even though we've gone through all the questions, I'd love for you to uplift a little bit more of the KJRA digital broadcasting. If you can tell us about your show. And then if you got any one inspiring quote to close us out, because after that quote, we're going to go to credits. So the floor is yours. Thanks.
So Tripwire, when I was approached by KGRA Digital Broadcasting Company to start the Veterans Podcast, I came up with the name Tripwire because there have been so many moments in life over the last 30, 40 years, 25, 30 years, that life or something in life has tripped me up and I have fallen to my knees. And sometimes it took me a long time to actually stand back up and dust myself off and, straighten out my bootlaces or whatever else I had to do to kind of get my head right and move forward. So tripwires or booby traps, life can be a booby trap at times, depending on what you're dealing with. And it connects to the word itself, connects to my community with the EOD family. It's a great show. It's veterans for veterans. I like to discuss like you do, what led you into the military? How was your experience in the military? How was the experience in the military for the family? How did transition go? And post-military, how has that influenced you? How has that influenced your family? Funny stories, pros and cons of life. And, it's for all of us that have served. There's nothing against them. I know a lot of guys that are out there that are 1%ers in the sense of that 1% of the military, the highest echelon of service in the military, from special teams. I want to give a voice to all of the rest of us. So we're hitting, next week is week 4, critiquing it every week, trying to mold it so that it's better every week. And since I've been advertising it, a lot of people that I know, such as yourself, we've been friends for years on social media, but these friendships are expanding and these associations are expanding, and they're offering situations like this. And again, pleasure to be here. Honored that you considered having me on the show. And it's Tripwire and KGRA Digital Broadcasting. We're on Facebook, and the show airs live or airs on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central.